when Caitlin Clark showed up on NBC's Sunday Night Basketball broadcast. She did more than break down the Lakers and Knicks matchup. She delivered a message. A direct, unmistakable message about the style of basketball she wants to play. And many of you noticed it instantly, right when she mentioned Luka Doncic. Because this moment carries real tension. Stephanie White has already gone on record criticizing the very style of play Clark openly praised on national television. This was not a casual answer. This was Clark telling the basketball world and her own head coach how she views her future. The moment was set up perfectly. Caitlin Clark sitting next to Pacers legend Reggie Miller during a primetime NBA broadcast, being asked which player she studies the most. It is the type of question stars hear all the time. Usually the response is safe and polished, something that avoids conflict. But Clark chose a different path. She immediately pointed to Luka Doncic. And if you understand Stephanie White's coaching beliefs, you know why that answer hit so hard. Clark explained her thinking in detail. She spoke about how Luka manipulates defenders, how he uses his body to gain separation even though he is not the quickest or most athletic player on the floor. She admitted she often avoids contact rather than leaning into it, and said that is something she wants to improve by studying how Doncic plays on the surface. It sounds like honest self-reflection from one of basketball's sharpest minds, but when you look closer it signals something much bigger. If you believe context matters, hit that like button. It shows we are on the right path now. This is where things get uncomfortable for everyone involved. Stephanie White has openly criticized Luka Doncic's style of play. There is real footage of White breaking down Mavericks games on national television, highlighting how the offense looks different when Doncic sits. She has spoken about his heavy usage, about the ball staying in his hands, about how the team moves more freely when he is not controlling possessions. Her message was clear. It was a critique of ball-dominant basketball, the idea that one player runs everything while teammates adjust around that structure. Now think about what Caitlin Clark just said. She wants to shape her game after the exact style. Stephanie White has questioned the same approach White suggested hurts team chemistry. The same philosophy White's coaching with the Fever appears to be moving away from. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. You have watched the games. You have seen the offense run through Aaliyah Boston more than expected. You have noticed Clark operating as one part of the system instead of the focal point, and you have been asking the question that now cannot be ignored: is Stephanie White the right coach for Caitlin Clark? This clash of ideas is no longer theoretical. It is happening in real time and in public, with one of the sport's biggest stars effectively telling her coach on national television that she wants to play a style of basketball. The coach has openly criticized this is not a minor disagreement over schemes or rotations. This is a core difference in basketball philosophy, and that type of conflict rarely stays quiet. Let us connect the dots. Caitlin Clark is a high-usage player. That is not an insult. It is reality. Her game depends on having the ball, creating shots for herself and others, setting the pace and directing the offense. That is what made her a once-in-a-generation talent at Iowa. That carried into her rookie year with the Fever after the Olympic break last season. When the Fever offense found its rhythm, it happened because Clark had freedom to do what she does best: pick and rolls, deep-range shots, precise passes through traffic, and full control of tempo. The offense became one of the league's most dangerous, and the wins started stacking up. Then Stephanie White arrived, and suddenly the offense looked different, more movement-based, more balanced, more focused on shared control. The ball flowed through Aaliyah Boston as a playmaker from the post. Clark became one option among many instead of the main driver. It mirrors the system White used with the Connecticut Sun, which is natural because coaches bring their systems with them. But the real question is this: is that system right for a player like Caitlin Clark? White is a capable coach. No one is challenging her knowledge or experience. But being a good coach and being the right coach for a specific star are not The same, you can be great at what you do and still be the wrong match and win. Your star praises on national television the very style you have criticized when she talks about becoming more ball dominant while you're installing a system designed to lower her usage. That is not a small gap, that is massive. The timing of Clark's comments makes them even more meaningful. This was not an off-season conversation. This happened during the season while playing under White's system. While dealing with this exact tension, she praised Luka Doncic, knowing White has questioned that style. Whether Clark meant it as a message or not, that is how it comes across, and judging by the reaction from WNBA media and fans, that is how everyone else sees it too. Look at what Clark specifically pointed out. She mentioned Luka's ability to guide defenders where he wants them to go, using his body to carve out space, keeping defenders behind or beside him, embracing contact instead of avoiding it. These are not generic compliments. These are skills that demand the ball isolation chances and a system centered on her controlling possessions. It is a blueprint for ball-dominant basketball, shared on national television while playing for a coach who has publicly questioned that blueprint. You are not imagining things when you notice the Fever's offense shift under White. The eye test was accurate. The numbers confirm it. Clark's usage has changed. The ball movement looks different. The offensive identity no longer matches the version that made the Fever most dangerous, and now Clark herself has essentially backed up what many of you believed. She wants to play a different style than the one she is currently being asked to play. Here is what makes this situation so difficult for Stephanie White. She took over a team that had just begun to click. The Fever's late-season run was not luck. It came from Clark growing confident, teammates learning how to play off her gravity, and a system that allowed her to be herself. That version of the Fever was electric. They were must-watch. They were breaking through a crowded sports landscape, and much of that success came from unleashing Clark, not holding her back. Drop a comment below. Do you think Stephanie White's system brings out the best in Caitlin Clark, or is the Fever leaving points behind by limiting her usage? Let us know what you think. White arrived with a new vision, and again, that vision is not wrong. In theory, motion offense works. Ball movement wins games. Getting everyone involved can succeed. The Connecticut Sun proved that, but the Sun did not have Caitlin Clark. They never had a player who could shoot from 30 feet or slip passes through gaps most players never notice, and create offense in ways that shatter normal defensive systems. When you have talent like that, do you really want to turn them into just another part of the system? The comparison to Luka Doncic is not random. Clark picked a player whose style creates debate, a style traditional voices often attack for being too ball-heavy, too isolation-focused, too centered on one person. But here is what those critics fail to see. When you have someone who can do what Luka does, when a player operates at that level, everything changes. Yes, the ball stays in his hands. Yes, his usage is extremely high, but the outcomes speak clearly. He produces great shots for himself and for others. He controls the game. He improves teammates not through non-stop passing, but through the pressure he applies and the choices he makes. Caitlin Clark understands that. She knows her game at its peak works the same way. She is not Luka, of course. Different sport, different body, different situation. But the core idea is identical. When you have elite offensive ability, you build around it, not against it. You give that player control and let them go to work. You design systems that boost their strengths, instead of watering them down to match an abstract idea of how basketball should look. Stephanie White talked about the Mavericks' offense being smoother without Luka, and those comments are now coming back in an unfortunate way. Because whether she meant it or not, she suggested teams are better when the ball is not held by one dominant player. Now she is coaching a team where the main attraction, the biggest talent, the player who fills seats and drives attention, thrives in that exact ball-dominant role. This is no longer just philosophical. It is practical. It is measurable. It shows every time you watch the Fever play. Fans are not tuning in to see Aaliyah Boston run offense from the post. They are not buying tickets to watch Kelsey Mitchell wait on the perimeter. Those players do their roles well. But let us be honest about what creates interest in Indiana Fever basketball. People are watching for Caitlin Clark. They want the deep logo shots. They want the passes that light up highlight reels. They want to see her take control of games. The way she did at Iowa. The way she began to do in the WNBA once she settled in. White's system appears built to limit that. Maybe in her view that is the correct basketball move. Maybe she believes a more even attack, one that depends less on Clark, will hold up better over a long season and into the playoffs. Maybe she worries about burnout, or that Clark becomes easier to defend if she has the ball every trip. Those are fair coaching thoughts, but they apply to normal stars, not once-in-a-generation talents who change the limits. Here is what rarely gets enough attention. Caitlin Clark is not a normal star. She is not someone you drop into a system and expect adjustment. She is the player you design the system around. She is the type of talent that appears once in a generation. Someone who operates at a level that forces us to rethink what is possible in women basketball. When you have that, when you are fortunate enough to coach that, your responsibility is not to force them into your beliefs. It is to adjust your beliefs to unlock their gifts. The tension we see will not disappear through compromise. You cannot have balanced ball-dominant basketball with motion-based basketball. They are completely different philosophies. One demands the star handle the ball constantly, to control pace, to make decisions, to create advantages through individual brilliance. The other spreads responsibility, focuses on movement and spacing, and treats players as interchangeable parts. There is no middle space that fully satisfies both. So what comes next? That is the question hanging over the Fever. Does White change her system to free Clark more? Does Clark accept a smaller role for the team idea? Do they settle into an uneasy balance that pleases no one, but avoids conflict? Or does this tension keep growing until something finally breaks? Until a choice is made about whether the coach vision or the player ability guides the direction of the franchise. When you connect the dots, a hard truth appears. When your star publicly praises a style of basketball you have openly questioned, when they say on national television they want to model their game after a player whose approach you criticized, that is not a small disagreement. That is a deep misalignment. And in professional sports, when a coach and a star are split on something this fundamental, history shows it rarely ends smoothly. The Fever now face a decision. They can stay on the path White has chosen, with Clark as one piece of a balanced attack, and hope winning makes limiting their biggest star acceptable. Or they can admit what many already know, that Caitlin Clark at her peak. Caitlin Clark unleashed. Caitlin Clark playing the style she just described is worth building everything around, even if it reduces ball movement, even if usage climbs, even if it means embracing the exact style Stephanie White has questioned. Clark words on NBC were not just commentary on Luka Doncic. They were a message, a clear signal of how she sees her future. And whether White agrees or not, that message puts responsibility on the Fever organization. They must choose what kind of team they want. Do they want to be a disciplined, balanced group that plays the approved way? Or do they want to be the team that lets Caitlin Clark be Caitlin Clark? Controversy included. If you are still here, if you think this matters for the future of the Fever and the WNBA, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We will keep tracking this, because it is about to get much more intense. In the next video, we break down what the front office is reportedly saying privately about the Clark-White situation. You do not want to miss it. This kind of tension defines seasons. It either lifts a team higher or breaks it from within. And right now, with Caitlin Clark praising ball-dominant basketball on national television, while playing for a coach who has criticized that very idea, the Indiana Fever are walking a tightrope. Which direction they fall will decide everything.